All right, well, it happens in football, and now it happens to people who play virtual games. Would you believe this? Call of Duty gamer Thomas Paparato, who goes by Zuma online, says he has to step back from professional gaming and all its money because of his thumb. That's right, he's injured. The 25-year-old says he has to stop competing for the future because the pain in his hand just isn't possible anymore. So apparently his thumb and his index finger feel the best when pressed together. And when you're using a video game controller, that's not okay. Okay, get it? Put your thumb in your index. It's not okay. All right, that busted me up. I'm sure it did too. And you see, ladies and gentlemen and boys and girls, just an example of the fun that we have here week after week as we talk about living the best digital life. Of course, we talk about the gadgets and gizmos, what's left of your privacy and security, which is hardly anything anymore. We talk about making money and saving money. Of course, it's called the Kim Komando Show because, after all, I'm America's beloved digital goddess, Kim Komando, here with you once again. A-OK. And just a quick reminder, you can find us on over 400 top stations from coast to coast and around the globe on American Forces Network Radio. That's more than 375,000 American servicemen and women, thank you, in 175 countries and 200 ships at sea. Get the Kim Komando Show. Hey, and our T-Mobile Unlimited listener line is open. I know you have at least a few questions about something digital I can lend a hand to. And we're going to begin this show with 5 things that you need to know. And yes, it was a big week. On Wednesday, President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris were officially sworn in. And the initial focus has been executive orders dealing with the pandemic, of course. But the big question is, what does this mean to the future of big tech? Now, former President Trump was no fan of big tech, particularly when it was perceived to censorship in social media. And Section 230, which is a 25-year-old piece of legislation that basically protects social media companies from any liability when it comes to what its users post. So it doesn't mean things are going to get easier for these companies under the new administration. We're not talking politics. I'm just letting you know that there's bipartisan support for revoking this Section 230. You need to know about this. And as for antitrust, all those lawsuits have been filed by the Justice Department against Facebook and Google. They're not going away. And social media's role in how users orchestrated the attack on the U.S. Capitol building earlier this month is only going to increase the chances for more regulation, including probably much stronger efforts to break all these companies up. And when you think about it, the big 5 companies, you have to know who the big 5 is. You see it written online, the big 5. Well, who exactly are the big 5? Facebook, Google parent company Alphabet, Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple. They really have a lot of power and control. I mean, just look what happened to Parler. And Parler is kind of back, maybe. Okay, there are at least some signs of life. If you go to the web address, parler.com, you'll see some activity. It's not very much at this point, just a web page describing technical difficulties and statements from some of the Parler staffers. And you got to start somewhere. Apparently, if you start doing the research, I thought you'd find this interesting, that it's being helped by DDoS Guard, which is a Russian-owned cloud services company with, let's just say, a questionable client list all around the world. Now, according to the WHOIS database, it looks like Parler registered its domain last week with another Russian-owned company called Epic. But Epic denies any working with Parler at all. And even if Parler solves the server problem, it's still not going to be available in Google Play or the Apple App Store. It's not there now, and the previously downloaded versions of the app just simply don't work. So with no easy way to distribute its app, can enough folks find the website, sign in, and keep Parler financially viable? It's a battle against all odds, but apparently it's just not over. All right, number 3, let's move on to streaming content. Wow, doesn't it seem like every time you turn around, there's yet another streaming service? Well, on March 4th, here comes Paramount Plus with plans for new original series. They say more than 20,000 episodes and movies from existing companies like Paramount Pictures and CBS, Nickelodeon, Comedy Central, MTV, and BET. Does it sound familiar? Yes, this is CBS All Access, which is being rebranded as Paramount Plus. But why? It's a smart marketing move, really. CBS All Access used to be made up of just CBS content. And then, of course, 2 halves of one family's empire, CBS and Viacom, they merged, and now All Access expanded well beyond it. But the reason why I'm bringing this to your attention is that What's going on with the streaming wars is that we're getting more players, we're getting more competition, and the prices are going up. So if you haven't checked your streaming bills lately, you might want to add it up because when you start looking at the cost versus traditional cable, you may actually find that you're spending more money streaming than you did on your cable bill. Because if you're waiting for those prices to fall, well, you can just dream on or stream on. All right, number 4, you're not paranoid. They really are watching you. An MIT survey found that since the start of the pandemic, a third of U.S. workers shifted to remote working, which has become the norm for just millions of people, and people love it. And that has led to companies seeking software-based methods to track productivity. Now, sales of this tracking software increased by 55% in June of 2020 alone compared with pre-COVID sales. This is software that captures your keystrokes. It logs everywhere that you go. Some actually take screenshots of what's going on your screen every 10 minutes. So if you're working at home, maybe this is on your computer, right? Well, is this legal? It is if they tell you up front. But if you think you're being watched without consent, some of the most popular programs to look out for are Time Doctor, Hubstaff, and FlexiSpy. Those make up about 60% of the employee monitoring software. So how do you tell if it's on your system? Well, the obvious place to start is to see what's installed in your computer. But look for other telltale signs, like maybe your webcam is coming on when you didn't activate it. Maybe you're just sitting there. Nothing's going on. Nothing's running in the background. And then suddenly the hard drive starts spinning and make a whole bunch of noises. We have some other telltale signs that you can find over on our website at komando.com. Your keyboard could be keeping track of your workday when it begins and even afterwards, because after all, it has 2 shifts. Oh, it never stops. Number 5, baby, it is hot inside. Now, you probably noticed that your computer puts off a lot of heat. That's what electronics do. Maybe it's a little warmer when the computer's working hard, multiple processes going on, Windows tabs open, you got software running in the background. Maybe you got some video going on too. But what if that heat from your computer could actually be a heater? It's actually working for some gamers who put their computers through it, and others with computers that are constantly mining for cryptocurrency are doing the same thing. I read about this in the Wall Street Journal. I just had to tell you about it. They published a report this past week that focused on some people around the world that are using their computers to stay warm this winter. One guy in Lafayette, California, is actually using his computer to heat a chicken coop in his backyard. Right? Hope it doesn't rain. Because electronics need to stay relatively cool to always work properly, which was why most computers have fans, so you don't want to overdo it. But it can help you save some money on your electric bills. The Wall Street Journal also spoke with a 25-year-old guy in Chicago who uses his gaming computer to keep his drafty 1-bedroom apartment warm. He says it's so much better than a space heater because you can't play games on a space heater. Wow. You can't argue with that logic. All right, coming up, we have some news about apps you need to delete off your smartphone right now. And what smartwatches are doing with COVID is very interesting. And then there's yet another dangerous phishing scam that I need to tell you about. And of course, we have all of your fantastic phone calls here on this coast-to-coast broadcast of the Kim Komando Show. All right, over at komando.com, what's trending, 5 apps that you should delete off your smartphone right now. Because you have all these third-party apps that maybe you've installed over time. And when you install an app, you know as well as I do, is that you just sit there and you go, oh, I agree. Of course I agree, because if you don't agree to all the terms and conditions when you install it, you're not going to be able to use the app. And so there are apps that you probably have on your phone that you don't need because there's already that functionality. Like, for example, flashlight apps. They were really popular when smartphones came out, but now they're just built in. And what about QR code scanners that gives you a way to distribute a website's URL without having to remember that whole address? But now you can see them natively on your phone as well. And for a link to 5 apps that you need to remove on your phone right now, that was 2, there's 3 more. And you don't want to miss number 4, by the way, is head over to komando.com. That's komando.com. And when you're there, hit the link that says Kim Show. And smartwatches will now detect early COVID systems. This is really fascinating. I want to pass along before we go back to your phone calls, because it's this type of knowledge that gives you power. CBS News detailed a study called the Warrior Watch by researchers at Mount Sinai. They followed about 300 health workers between late April to the end of September who wore Apple Watches with special apps. And they found that the Apple Watch can detect small changes in a person's heartbeat, and that could be a sign of COVID-19. And it could happen an entire week before that person even starts experiencing any symptoms. And they're not the only ones. Over at Stanford, they had a wider net, Apple Watches, Fitbits, and the Garmin smartwatches, and they found that more than 80% of people who tested positive for the virus experienced changes in the resting heart rate up to 9 days before any symptoms. So here's the deal, is that if you have a smartwatch, start paying attention to your heart rate, the variability. But I have an idea. Smartwatches should be able to delete your browsing history if they detect that your heart has stopped. All right, back to the phones we go. Cindy in Newburgh, glad to have you with us, New Hampshire. Thank you, Cindy.
Oh, thank you for taking my message.
You got it.
Okay, so I have two things. I'm a solo family practice doc, and I have an office in New Hampshire. COVID has affected my office, so I decided that I would start a complete remote telemedicine practice in Ohio, and I have ties there from my residency and a lot of contacts there. So I'm trying to keep things simple. I have a current website that I developed myself about 5 years ago on Wix, and I would like to use that website for my other location in Ohio. So my thinking was that I would have on my homepage two buttons, one button for my New Hampshire office, a second for my Ohio office that's remote, and then you would click on those respectively and open up to see the content of what I offer at either spot.
That's really interesting that you're doing this. And so you're like a small town family doctor. That's awesome.
I am, and I'm a solo doc.
And so do you do everything from like babies to heart attacks?
Yes, I do.
Wow.
And surgeries and manipulation and home visits and yes.
Boy, you must be really you must be busy, like 24/7, I bet, right?
Well, I got burnout after 20 years of being employed, and so I have a different practice model. But COVID has one part of COVID as I was trying to be available for other people, so I did get emergent licenses in almost 15 different states, but a lot of people don't want to come in.
Sure.
So I've always done a lot of telemedicine, and so my thought was I have connections in Ohio. It'd be easy to, help people there with what I do. And so talking with my girlfriend, who's a lot more technically advanced than I am, she's telling me that I need to have a separate website and a separate URL, and I was just thinking...
Oh, no, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that.
I was just seeing a lot of money, and so...
Yeah, no, we don't want to. Let's talk about some solutions, okay?
Perfect.
On the onset, you know how sometimes if you ever visit, here's one way you could do it. And just for giggles, go over to like a vodka site or something like that. And before you can enter the vodka site, they put up a thing that says blah, 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 blah. Make sure you're over the age of 18. You can click to continue, right? One way you could do that is that you put up a splash screen before your website loads and says, pick your state. Are you in Ohio or New Hampshire? Okay. And then you probably should have a disclaimer. If you're not in these states, go to your nearest, whatever, just write something up, your nearest healthcare facility, whatever it is. And so that's one way you can do it. If you didn't want to do a splash screen, you could have two buttons at the top. Ohio residents click here, New Hampshire residents click here. Another way you could do it is through what's called geo-targeting. You see, whenever anybody goes on the internet, there's a lot of data that's being tracked, right? And so it's not just the browser that you're using and the operating system and the site that you were before, what kind of computer you have, but it also tracks your IP address. And so by figuring out the person's IP address is that we can do things like geo-targeting. So if you've ever wondered why you get ads for only pizza parlors in New Hampshire, that's done by geo-targeting. And so there are plugins, these are little programs that you can put into your website, and Wix has the ability. There's one called Geo-Targetly that works with Wix. And you put this into your website, and for $20 a month, it'll say, oh, this person's in Ohio. Let's show them this page, this site, these site pages. And, oh, this person's in New Hampshire. We can show them just this. Okay. That there is a downside to the geo-targeting in that if somebody is using a browser that is anonymizing them, say like the Tor browser, it'll think like, even though they're sitting there in Dayton, Ohio, it may think that they're in Amsterdam. Okay. If somebody's using a VPN, it'll think that they're in Los Angeles or wherever that VPN is located. So the geo-targeting is not 1,000% accurate. So if we want to do that, and by the way, the geo-targeting is like $20 a month. I think I said that, but in case I didn't, that's probably something. In case you want to do that, probably just that splash screen. And then
would the splash screen be better than doing the 2 buttons, or what do you think?
I think I would probably have both. I wouldn't rely on, because if somebody hit the wrong one, but you're going to have to make it really clear in the onset, and knowing that if you look at a heat map of how somebody looks at a website, they look at it left to right, and then they hang in the right-hand area. I'm just afraid that if it's not big enough, that somebody will not see that, and then your customer, your client, your patient, whoever it is, right, that they're going to get lost in this sea of web stuff, and then they're going to get frustrated. And so especially if you're dealing with folks that are not that computer literate, which I'm sure it's all across the board with you.
Yeah.
So we want to make it really easy and really simple. You could have a couple of domains. You could have, your healthcare in Ohio.com, your healthcare in New Hampshire.com. You could do that. But if you are not making a lot of money at this, then it starts. Now we're talking about maintaining 2 different sites.
Right.
Which,
that's what I was trying to avoid.
Yeah. Which that now you're looking at, whoa, now what am I going to really do? So I would probably explore the splash screen idea, because I think that would be the easiest. But I'm going to go ahead and send you some links to the geo-targeting, just so you have that at your disposal, so you can look at it in case that is something you want to try. I don't think it's going to be a large percentage of people that maybe are going to hit the wrong area. I just know from all the years that we've had a website that it just needs to be really, really easy for folks to find anything that they're looking for. And if not, frustration will set in, and then you lose them as a patient, as a client, as a visitor, whatever you want to do. Doctor, thank you so much for your call today. Hey, thanks for watching a past episode of my national radio show. That's why it's called The Kim Komando Show Rewind. Now, to get the entire show, all 3 hours, when it airs live, or you can get on demand, head over to getkim.com and you can become a member of the Komando community. There are a ton of perks. Aside from just the show, you get free ebooks, a place to get answers to your tech questions, and more of me. So come on, what are you waiting for? Click that link right now and become a member. And thank you.